The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to my State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke. It's going to be a busy week with schools starting and all of that. In the meantime, what you may not be paying attention to with all the concern about COVID and the schools is the idea that our General Assembly has decided that it's not going to go back to work until at least after the November election. A joint statement was issued by, ironically, the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President, indicating that their focus would be for returning after the November election to try to put the finishing touches on a budget, hoping that Washington would send more regulations and more money for COVID and government budget relief, and that there would be a special election for bonding, which is incredible, folks. You have to know that the idea that a special election, low voter turnout, for bonding issues, just bonding means budget, and people don't get excited about that, will cause a bullet turnout without much review of the state's spending. And that's just the way it's been, and that's just the way it's going to be unless this public stands up and does something about it. End of speech. Let me bring in somebody who's got some thoughts on it. At least the state Republicans are not going away quietly. And so here is our minority leader, Blake Filippi, state representative, Republican Party, and part of a caucus that's asking the question, when are we going to get back to work? Representative Filippi, thanks for joining me. And the question is, when are you going to get back to work?
They keep moving the goalposts. I know in June they said, we're coming back in August. We're confident we're going to have clarity on our budget in August. We're coming back, don't worry. Now it's moved to November. And maybe when November comes, it'll move to January, and so on and so on. But that's just to deal with budgetary issues. The General Assembly won't conduct any oversight of the governor's exercise of legislative powers, and it's a problem.
Yeah, so we should, without being nonchalant about this whole thing, you and I have talked about this almost ad nauseum over the course of 2020 on both platforms, on television and on the radio. And I tend to fall into this trap where our familiarity about the arguments may not seize the kind of energy that it should for the general public. This is, going backwards. It's incredible what happened here with the General Assembly and the shutdown. The emergency authority that the General Assembly handed to Governor Raimondo earlier in the year was understandable via the virus. But going back to the remedy that the General Assembly, brought to the table for that, and this emergency board review, named what officially again? What was the name?
The Joint COVID Task Force.
Yes, the Joint COVID Task Force, which met formally a couple of times, and we had a controversy where you tried to step into it as an ex officio member of the minority party, and it was a whole big to-do, and the speaker suggested that you were playing, you were doing some kind of a Hollywood act. It had no force of law because the emergency powers simply gave the governor all the authority to run everything in the state re-COVID, and what isn't in the state re-COVID right now, right? So review with everybody about that.
Yeah, so under our emergency statutes, the governor has broad authority to essentially exercise the legislative power through executive orders. She can issue orders which have the force of laws which would typically be passed by the General Assembly. And in an emergency where there's pestilence, and war, invasion, and the General Assembly is not able to meet, you have to have this power somewhere, and our laws provide that it transfers to the governor. And so maybe in the beginning of this mess in March and April, when we didn't know the lethality of this virus, it made sense to transfer some of these powers to the governor. And I was actually very supportive of many of her acts in the beginning. But in about late April, we started calling on the General Assembly to conduct its constitutional oversight function, to oversee what the executive branch is doing. It's something we do all the time, Dan. DCYF, UHIP, we constantly had oversight hearings where we bring in administrative officials and ask them hard questions. I think that oversight is more critical now than ever because the governor is exercising essentially legislative authority. So in response to our calls, they create this fictitious joint task force. Now, the reason it's fictitious is that the General Assembly, the two houses, each have a constitutional oversight function. We enact rules which empower the Speaker to establish committees to exercise that constitutional oversight function. If a committee is established, I'm on it as an ex officio member and the House Minority Leader. So instead of going through our proper constitutional rule, the Speaker created this informal group of legislators in a room to conduct oversight during this pandemic. And I think it's just very flippant and exhibits a lack of seriousness that they're doing things so informally that the limited oversight we've had hasn't even been lawful oversight.
Well, you know, in their defense, early on, it felt like because everything was just so urgent and dramatic and felt emergent, that giving the governor the emergency authority to be able to make decisions, quick, and in the interest of the pandemic health battle, made sense to me. That they created this emergency funding task force and made it unicameral, meaning merging the House and the Senate together. It seemed like triage, but not even a semi-long-term solution. Never mind what's going on here now. Since the General Assembly has gone back into session to decide not to do anything on the budget and to make a couple of miscellaneous decisions, a cumulative couple 3 days in general that the General Assembly sat together, correct?
2 days. We all got in a room proving that we're able to safely meet. Which kind of belies the argument now that we're in a pandemic, we can't get together, can't do our jobs. Meanwhile, today, how many tens of thousands of kids are going to school?
Well, that's we're going to talk about the irony of that. It is incredible. In fact, why don't we do this? When we come back, we're going to talk about what happened last week when the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and the Governor put out a joint message that they were just going to kind of keep doing what they're doing and postpone any budgetary decisions until after November. The Republican caucus responded. We'll tell you about that. And then we'll talk about the Republicans' ideas for school and the irony of all this on My State of Mind with State Representative Blake Filippi. Please stay with us. And welcome back into My State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke with State Representative Blake Filippi, the Republican leader, of course. Now, we are going through this whole crazy scenario from last week where Governor Raimondo signed on to a joint statement with the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, announcing to the world that the General Assembly itself would not be coming back for decisions on budget or anything else, for that matter, until after the November election, and that there would be a special election for bond issues, which you want to talk about bullet voting. Oh, my heavens. We'll talk about the nature of that in a second. The argument they make is that the feds haven't gotten together. Congress has not gotten together on a stimulus package to resend money to states to back them up on their losses, COVID and beyond. Governor Raimondo has been sitting on the bulk of a $1.25 billion initial send to Rhode Island, hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, more money than not in that fund is still sitting there. Her argument is that she wants to save it in case Washington doesn't send money to plug the holes in the budget, which are near $900 million with COVID and all that kind of thing. By the way, FYI, there was at least a few $100 million of deficit before COVID even was a concept. And so I'm not sure why we're asking Washington to pay for that. Just give me your thoughts on the idea that no General Assembly until after the November election.
I think it's a total dereliction of duty. I think it's important to note on those COVID funds, the federal law does not allow them to be used to plug our budget hole. They're holding on to those funds in the hope that Congress passes a law. Now, by holding on to those funds, they're not hitting the street where they got to go. They were sent to Rhode Island to fix up our schools, to support our small businesses. For instance, right now, there's thousands of kids across the state who aren't doing in-person learning because school committees have said our schools aren't safe enough. We don't have proper ventilation. Those monies could have been used to install HVAC systems, which have allowed schools to do in-person learning where kids actually get a good education. And guess what? Parents wouldn't have to stay home from work so their kids aren't alone in an empty house. Parents could go to work, make money, pay taxes, support the state. So they're holding on to these monies in the hope the federal government changes the law. The federal government's completely dysfunctional. I don't think we can rely on them changing the law. I don't think we should be basing policy decisions in this state in the hope that the federal government takes some type of affirmative action. It's totally divided down there. We should be using this money for what it is intended, and that is to help people who are hurt by this shutdown. Small businesses that were forced to close through no choice of their own.
It's interesting. There's a sense of lawlessness in the country on so many levels, but this is government lawlessness. You know, just because Congress can't get together on a second agreement and, you know, get together with the White House doesn't mean that what they wrote and how they wrote it doesn't stick and doesn't matter. And with Governor Raimondo, she's often concerned about the tone of Washington and blah, blah, blah. And she's all about the rules when it comes to COVID. And to her credit, again, she lowered the curve via her style. We can go into that. We've discussed it enough in 2020. But she's breaking the rules, to use her term. She's breaking the law. But there's no police. There's no police for it. Our own General Assembly and the majority of it, remember, you're the Republicans and you're the minority. There's nobody there that's going to step up and say anything different. And the politics behind it are fascinating in that the governor's alternatives eventually are going to be public layoffs or public furloughs or public part-time or public, because there's a lot of public employees on the payroll. And I'm not advocating for any of those people to be hurt, but the math doesn't add up. And I don't think she wants to pull that plug prior to the November election. Or prior to January. I don't think she wants the national attention for the kind of heat she's going to get for the remedies that she's going to have to bring. Do you read it the same way?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there, Dan. So with the COVID funds, the CARES Act funds, they have to be spent on COVID-related expenditures by December 31st. Any unused funds by December 31st have to be repaid to the federal government. So we're holding on to these monies, wishing upon a change to the federal law. Now, suppose we hold on to these monies and the federal government doesn't change the law, and we got to give them all back to the federal government come December 31st. We're going to be kicking ourselves in the butt saying, oh, wow, we really should have spent those monies for their intended purposes, and think of how much pain we caused for the people because we greedily held on to them for use to plug budget holes in the hope that Congress changes the law. And so I agree with you that I think they're delaying making these hard choices for a lot of reasons. You know, for instance, our General Assembly leadership, they've made a ton of promises to their constituents, car tax, money to schools, et cetera, that they're not going to be able to keep those promises. And so they're cynically waiting until after the election, which I think is just outrageous because we're not reforming government, and we're going to have to reform government. Now, I'm going to bet that the federal government isn't going to bail us out, period. They're not going to change this law to allow CARES Act funding to be used to plug budget holes, and we're going to have to make structural changes in the state.
Yeah.
And by waiting months, you know, we come back in November, after November, that's 6 months into a budget year. We've lost all this time that we could have been making the structural reforms that we're going to have to make anyways, and the pain's going to be worse.
Yeah, well, look, my argument here has been that there should be an A, B, C, D, E, F, G options that the General Assembly is helping to lay out. If this, if not, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, what's becoming transparent here is that there's only a few people running the government anyway, even if you guys are in session. And, you know, it's why on so many levels this General Assembly is being exposed for how little impact it has across 113 seats on both sides. But I will tell you, on your prediction about the end of the year, look, I think come the week before Christmas, you could see like some kind of magnificent escrow account being established, for COVID expenditure if the rules on COVID don't get changed. I mean, there's no way we're sending that money back. I mean, they'll figure out a way to put an escrow account of some kind together that says, hey, listen, this really is for the small budget and for the and for the ventilations, for the small business and the ventilation systems for HVAC. Oops, sorry, we're late. There's no way they're sending $900 million back to Washington. That's not happening.
Listen, they may, in that last week of December, try and throw the money onto the street. But frankly, Dan, at that point, it's too late. Businesses have closed. Kids have already missed half the year and done at-home schooling. It's crazy. Everything we're doing, purportedly, is based on wishing upon the federal government to act. And I just think that's a naive approach. And I think really what's going on is that they don't want to make the hard political decisions before the November election. And that is absolute cowardice.
Yeah, that part I agree with. You have some ideas on the schools right now. When we come back, the Republican Minority Leader Blake Filippi on My State of Mind. Stay with us. Welcome into My State of Mind. Dan Yorke, Blake Filippi, State Representative Minority Leader. We've kind of gone over the week that it's been with the General Assembly saying we'll see you after the November election. Crazy as that is, the Republicans last week proposed some ideas for the schools. Now, look, I mean, if a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make any noise? I don't say that to ridicule Republicans. I say that if the General Assembly Democrats and independents aren't there to hear your ideas, I mean, they're not going to react to them. But the public is. And you do have a track record of throwing out a good idea or two, and then it reappears under a Democratic assignment, whether that happens in this calendar year or not is beside. But you have a two-pronged idea for the schools. Tell us about it.
So really, it deals with people who are doing at-home learning. There's really two classifications of at-home learning. One is in school districts where there's a high COVID transmission rate and it's not safe to go back to school. The other classification is in areas that don't have a high transmission rate, but the local school committees have said we're not going back to school. So our two-pronged approach is this. In any place where there is at-home learning, where there's a high transmission rate or not, and you have a school committee that has said you can't go back to school, we are looking to establish what are called educational savings accounts. And we want to fund those through existing school district monies, because schools are going to be saving a whole bunch of money by doing at-home learning. No buses, no heat, no electricity, no janitorial services, no food services. There's going to be a lot of money saved by school districts. And so what we propose to do is to have parental controlled educational savings account funded by school money and CARES Act funding, which will provide tutoring, at-home services like notepads, Chromebooks, all the resources needed for students to maximize at-home learning. Now, in districts that don't have a high COVID transmission rate, we're proposing a type of limited public school choice, where suppose you're in Warwick and your school committee has said, no, we're not doing in-person learning. The student at that point would be able to take their money and go to another public school that has vacancy in the state within regional boundaries. Currently, we have approximately 20,000 empty seats in our public schools, excluding Providence, Central Falls, and Warwick. So there's a lot of open seats in areas that have in-person learning, and we feel that kids maximize their learning potential by being in a classroom, and we shouldn't be denying them that potential.
Yeah, we only have a couple minutes here. The education savings accounts is an idea that may have the time may be right for that, COVID or not. It's something that's happening across the country. I would think that if a family is prohibited because of COVID, for sending their kid in, that's one thing. If they choose not to, that's another thing. If they're homeschoolers by nature, that's another thing. I think you got to work all that out. But I think there's something to that needs to be embraced. I love the school choice thing, not public-private, like the old argument, feels like the old
totally.
Vouchers. And I've always loved intra-public school competition. I just think transportation and logistics right now make this a complete mess. I don't know how you can get that done. I just don't.
I mean, we have the structure in place now with the Pathways program. This is done in a limited basis. We've learned how to do it in the state. And, maybe we don't have to send a kid from Warwick down to Westerly, but kid from Warwick to Cranston, Warwick to North Kingstown. Why not look at it? We've done a lot of research, talked to a bunch of parents, and we know at-home learning is not working. And in addition to that, think of all the parents who aren't going back to work because they have to stay home with their kids. I mean, this is a serious economic development issue. And I really think we have to look at this as like a battlefield education right now with COVID, that we have to act quickly, we have to act decisively, and we can't let the traditional way of doing things stop us from, one, saving our kids, who when they lose a year of education, they don't get it back, and also empowering our parents to go out there and make money to save their family, and frankly, at the same time, save our economy from what is doom and gloom when we have to take on our budget for next year.
Well, listen, the voice of the Republican Party has been a little bit more clear in 2020, ironically, against what has been a silent Democratic General Assembly. Keep speaking. Right now, you're the only ones. At the end of this, when it becomes normal again, can perhaps still be a more substantial position. I don't know. November elections, we'll talk about that when we get closer. Minority Leader, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Blake Filippi.
Always, Dan. Thank you.
A final word and we come back on My State of Mind. Stay with us. We have enough confrontation in the world right now. We don't need any more. But you can politely say to your legislator that you meet in the supermarket or on the street with your mask, smile with your mask, and say, I'd like my money back. I think you should return your part-time check because you're not going into work for it. Pretty simple. Tomorrow we'll take a look at the school conditions in the city of Providence and the teacher union's concern about that. And don't forget to tune in to the radio on WPR weekdays 3 to 6 for my radio version. Have a great night. Good night.